Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Discovery Channel. Tom O'Connor in suddenly cooler New Orleans, where the heat dome has abandoned us for at least for the weekend. Um, and Really pleased to be joined today with Shannon Bales from, and I always get this, hey, Shannon, um, Litigation Support Senior Manager at Munger
Yes.
Tools. Is that correct?
At Munger Tools, yes.
All right.
Reporting for duty.
Well, it seems like one of those adjectives. It seems like it should be senior litigation support manager, not litigation support senior manager. You know what I mean?
I, you know,
It's just
I have mixed emotions about being a senior, you know.
yeah. I'd rather bury it in the middle there somewhere.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. I'll
Uh,
go with that. I
uh,
understand totally.
Things were way better 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so, you've got a varied background. You've worked at a lot of firms, not a lot of firms, but you've worked at several big firms, Latham Watkins and Gibson Dunn.
Hmm.
Um, had a little side venture over to the dark side to work with FTI for a little bit.
Yes.
Um, but I was really intrigued by, and I get this all off your LinkedIn profile. Um, a significant chunk of time there where you were litigation support advisor for the War Crimes Tribunal or
Yes.
tribunals. Well, tell me about that as a database guy in big civil cases in the U.S. Any big database, entices me, but that one seems intriguing.
Over my career, over the last 20 years, I've been involved with war crime tribunals in Rwanda, Cambodia, Syria, and with a quasi tribunal trying to get off the ground in Ukraine.
Uh huh.
I got into it because I have a quest for public service and volunteerism and trying to do the right thing. I try my best to do the right thing as a example to my daughters and just wanted to give back to a community that has been very good to me. And so I started way back in I lived in Tanzania with my wife for some time. The firm I was with, Munger Tolls, was very kind to me and allowed me time, like a sabbatical, to go work at these tribunals. But I was very well known for fact analysis tools at that time, for like CaseMap, and went out to help them with their fact management training and education and consulting so that they could tell the story of what happened to the victims of the various
So you
war
were on
crimes.
site.
I was on site, yes. Which, it's really funny, there was not a lot of information about where we were going to be at. And we didn't know what to expect. My wife and I, out of going to live in Arusha, Tanzania. We asked people. There wasn't the internet knowledge that there was in
Right.
2005, 2006 that we have now. Like the Yelp ratings on the local hotels were non-existent. Um, we were told by people, you need to buy this special underwear that you don't need to change for 30 days. And I was like, if I can't change my underwear for 30 days, I'm not sure
They're going to throw
either
me
one
out
of
of
us
the
want to
country,
go.
right?
Yeah, and we ended up going, and Arusha, Tanzania, turned out to be the jumping off point for all safaris in that area, and so it was actually quite nice, and the
Wow.
people were wonderful, and I mean, there was some dangerous elements as being a non-local there, but which is true of all kind of war crimes locations, former war zones, that kind of
That's true
thing.
of New Orleans. I mean,
Yeah. I have had scarier experiences in New Orleans than I have ever had anywhere else that I've
I
ever traveled.
I
It's an
don't doubt
unfortunate
that for a
fact.
moment.
But we loved it, and my mandate kind of increased from fact analysis tools to databases and transcripts and looking over the processes that the tribunals were using to do that. Some data management, for example, consultants were having in Cambodia. In the case of Cambodia, they were OCRing all these Cambodian language documents in English.
Wow.
Well, that's a problem because you can't use English characters to, because they ended up getting 99.999% garbage in the database, right? There was no Cambodian OCR at the time, so I knew it was kind of phony baloney. So, helping safeguard the workflow and process was correct, was and establishing new workflows was what I was there to do, and I really enjoyed it and continue to enjoy it.
It's interesting because there's been other we've discussed before other people in our business who've had that sort of experience. The guys who started Case Logistics were involved, I believe, in the Bosnian war crime
Mhm.
trials, as were the guys who started Sanction,
Yeah.
where a lot of go. So you get this sort of um, back and forth, and I can't remember where she was working, but I spoke with somebody a few months ago who was involved with some efforts at the United Nations, investigative. They weren't to the
Mhm.
point of war crimes yet, but there's a lot going on, and people lean on our knowledge.
I think that the UN has fully embraced what legal technology has to offer now, and it's night and day as to what it was 15 years ago when I first started.
Right.
And you look at amazing groups, and I can't remember their names off the top of my head, like the tribunal I spoke with about a year ago in Syria. I mean, they were as cutting edge and had workflow and process in place that was as good as any big law firm or government agency that I've seen here.
All right. Well, that's
So they've
great.
come
That's
a
great
long
to
way.
hear. And
Yeah.
that segues into our topic for the day when you talk about embracing technology. Um,
Mhm.
you wrote was it a full paper that you wrote and then published on LinkedIn? Was
It
it
was
an article?
a full article
Yeah.
with citations and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Almost, we'll call it almost scholarly. How about that? Almost scholarly.
There you go.
So there were citations and that kind of thing, and it was published on LinkedIn and on JD Supra
Yes. Yes. And of
via the
course,
EDRM. Via the EDRM, I have to do.
okay, fair enough. Um, and you made some points about AI and some of the things to be aware of. Um, regarding what it was actually processing. And was it looking at metadata? Was it not looking at metadata? Were some AI tools looking at some metadata, so forth and so on? And in the course of the discussion, you mentioned, of course, the Four Corners doctrine, which is familiar to everybody who works in the legal profession. Um, and then what set me off was a comment by a technologist, a fairly well-known technologist in our field, who said, quote, in responding to you, quote, I'm not so sure I agree about the four corners bit, though, end quote. And use of the word bit just made my what few teeth I have remaining from my surgery this week made them great. Like, oh, it was, and then as I had actually forwarded to you something today where a totally different um, uh, thread, um, Andrew Yang had talked about, making sure that law schools are teaching technology and AI in particular. And another technologist, another well-known technologist, um, posted that I'm not worried about that because, quote, given that law school involves a lot of generating hunks of text, and pretty much every college student in America is using AI to generate hunks of text, end quote, it shouldn't be a problem. So, um, there's this sort of, I don't want to say dismissive attitude. Maybe it's just not understanding exactly what it is that lawyers do with technology. And some of that's our fault for maybe not explaining it well. Certainly, a great deal of what I do in my work is an interpreter between the
Right.
lawyers and the technologists. I'm sure you run across that. But talk to me about the metadata. You had a great response, and rather than quote you, that's why you're here.
Well, well, the article itself was really uh, about kind of my journey a little bit with learning about Gen AI and my surprise as I've incorporated this into my workflows. that most Gen AI tools, and we're going to generalize here for a lot of our discussion, but most Gen AI tools aren't doing a deep dive into the metadata when they are looking for information. So, if you were looking for authorship or creation dates or things of that nature, you will have a very high propensity for hallucination or incorrect information to come out of that because AI is still a bit of a black box on what it processes when you take your file and you put it into the system.
Right.
And and I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of um, all this is a lot of this work is also self-service by attorneys who may not handle documents in the way that a litigation support person would. And getting that data into the system can produce a lot of potential issues with metadata, but the system itself may not, and likely does not look at the metadata when it's coming up with its analysis.
And interestingly to me, and in furthering of this discussion, last week at the Masters Conference in New York, Jerry Buoy,
Hmm.
well-known forensics guy, just kind of casually was talking about this issue and said, when it comes to things like audio and video files, photographs, um, most AIs just strip the metadata out, um, much like a PDF file, um,
Yeah,
and leave it, just toss it, so you don't have any metadata. Which, if you're certainly, I know, work that I do with the federal defenders, voice recordings and video camera, recordings are extremely important. And absent a transcript of the file, the metadata is key to
right.
understanding what we've got to look at. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting.
And really, the purpose of the article is to get legal people, everyone in our group, right? Attorneys, paralegals, lit support professionals, on the same page with what it is, what it is that you're understanding what it is that you're searching when you're putting a file into a Gen AI system.
Right.
It's not about, you know, it's not a cautionary tale for people not to use Gen AI or anything along those lines. I
No,
absolutely
no.
want people to use Gen AI, but I want them to know what they're searching and when they put a file in there. Um,
Herb Roitblad, who I interviewed or chatted with a week or so ago, made that same point. He said, sometimes I feel like, you say something that is an observation or you want to have a discussion and people are like, oh, he's anti-AI. He's
no,
a Luddite. Well, first of all, being anti-AI is saying like I'm anti-gravity. That,
right,
that conversation's over. Right.
right. We want to use it right, and we want to make sure that we're within the expectation of our legal team members and that we're just on the same page of what kind of content can we expect to reliably be created when we put something in there.
Yeah.
And, as a lit support person, I've spent years processing data and putting it into a so-called, traditional database, right? And with that, I get an error log. I know what didn't process. I've used forensically sound procedures to move the data from point A to point B and get it into the system. And I can tell you what you are and what you aren't searching with a high degree of certainty. A lot of AI tools, they say you can import in a PDF or a very limited set of data, right? Like the big Microsoft files, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and it encourages a lot of conversion to PDF to upload, which I think takes, strips out metadata and can cause its own problems. And it encourages a lot of copying and pasting from different points on your network and emails and things like that. All of which, to lit support professionals like you and I, is a big red siren going woo 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 woo, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and so to top it off, I think understanding what exactly is being searched when you're using an AI tool is a little misunderstood. And so I tried to, in my paper, to really illustrate what AI is looking at, and that is, and come up with a concept of document content. Document content is the data that's on the face of the document, the intended, which kind of jives very well with the four corners rule, which is anything you can see on the four corners of the document that was intended by the author.
The great quote
And
you had, um, I forget if it was in the original article or maybe the back and forth
yeah,
on LinkedIn, was um, in discussing the four corners rule. Your quote was, "It's about what is presented by default as part of the intended authored
right.
content." End quote. Um, if you stick metadata into the document when you produce it, okay. I mean, on the
Yeah,
face of the document.
right. If I have some setting, and that's my intention, and I realize, why people might have an issue with this, but at the same time, it's kind of a simplistic rule. It's what you intended and what's showing.
Right.
Could a judge go through and say we're going to count some other type? Sure, they could,
Of course. Of course.
but as a generalization and for learning, when we say the four corners of the document, it's what the author intended to be shown.
Right.
Could you could you go through the person that had the issue with the article? Could you go through and just because it's one click, does that mean that it's not document content or four corners rule? Yes. Yes, because it's not intended. If you had to click on it, if you had to go through a menu, if you had to go through all these different things, it's not four corners.
But
That,
which
that's
doesn't
my contention.
which doesn't impact at all. You can still produce it and include it, and it becomes part of the production.
yes,
Those are two different
yes.
questions. Yeah, I think there was a. Sometimes I think non people who don't work in the legal environment think we're nitpicking. We're making this stuff up, um, and
Right.
it's just the other thing that bothers me is all this discussion about metadata. Um, there's two types of metadata. I mean, we're talking about the document metadata and system metadata, which I don't think the average person is even considering, which in some cases may be really more important. I'm interested in, especially in email, for example, on the transmission metadata. I want to know how many steps it went through and when it went through in that line of delivery. Um, but that's not
Yes.
document metadata. Um,
Right.
it's system.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. So,
So there's
will
metadata and
the
there's
tools get
metadata.
there? You're right. Will the tools get there? I'm sure they'll get there to, um, incorporate more and more areas of metadata into their analysis and so that it's more accurate. But, you're still relying on these tools to parse data. In the article, I call it the text blob, right? Because it's ingesting that in its whole, and you're hoping that the AI tool is going to parse that data out. Who's the right author? Is it Tom or is it Shannon? Is that date that it's showing on the face of the document, is it going to translate that? Is it going to parse it into a create date field or the sent date, or which date field is it going to put it in?
Yep.
And I ran a test using some tools where I took some very old documents from the 70s, pre-email, and loaded it into systems, and it came up with all sorts of dates. And that's where my concern really started was
Yeah.
um, looking at how it hallucinated dates and authors based because it only had the face of the document to look at, and
So
it was interesting.
what should people be asking um, to make sure they understand what's going on? If your vendor is saying, "Hey, we're going to use AI to do first pass review," what when those when those sirens go off in our mind, what do you recommend?
I I think you have to be very careful with the process. So first thing is, what are you asking it to do? If you're asking for summarization and you're asking for it to give you calls on review calls on for a document review, I think it does it really well. If you're asking it to create a chronology for you or tell me who the authors are of all of these documents, that's the wrong tool for the job. And you probably need to go to more traditional means of analyzing your data. And what I'm seeing really is you need a hybrid approach to your analysis. So you might do your document review using your AI tool, but use uh, maybe your AI tool has traditional database features like fielded data for all of these different fields. I don't love personally, and again, these are my own opinions and not my firm's opinions.
Yeah.
I don't love I don't love the drag and drop analysis tools where there's not a lot of guardrails on what is being processed into the system. What is it, does it generate an error log? Um, so I really do tend to like the hybrid systems that have traditional fielded data with Gen AI analysis. So,
You know,
not plugging Rel Air does it,
yeah, yeah, yeah. We're not talking
all
about
these
any
things. Yeah.
specific tool here.
Yeah,
We're talking conceptually. What do you look at?
right.
There was a great article a couple of weeks ago. Also, I think it was Tara Emery had an analysis of um, using a tool. It doesn't matter what it was uh, to uh, to to attack, or not attack, but to go after an analysis of a relatively small. I want to say it was only about 7,000 documents, but they had a crunch, and they'd already been working with some of them. But she was talking about that hybrid. We're going to use this to do these certain tasks, and then people are going to look at it and review it. Tell us what the results are.
Right.
Tell what we did. Then we'll go back. I mean, that's the sort of thing that I really am comfortable with. Uh,
Yeah, I think asking your AI tool, find me all the documents related to this issue, right, is a great use of an AI tool. And it comes up with its list of what it thinks is responsive to that or answers your question, right?
right,
And then switching over and saying, okay, I've tagged all these records as answering my question. Now let me go through and create a chronology based on the traditionally processed records in the database, right?
right.
So, um, and I guess that would rely on having a tool that used traditional processing methods and is a hybrid database that has both Gen AI and traditional fields. So I think that those are the tools that are going to get us where we need to be and the workflows that still need to be worked out.
And is to be delicate about it because I'm always known for my tact. And um, um, is part of the problem that we're not getting enough education from the vendors about what their tools do? Or are we
Yeah,
not asking the right questions?
I think there's a lot of things around education. As a person that teaches at the
Yeah,
college level, I think there's a lot of things that are kind of wrong with the education around kind of like this gold rush around Gen AI. And there's a lot of salespeople who don't know what their own product does. So, I'll give you an example. Again, my paper was born out of experience of asking people, what does your tool analyze, or what's the error log look like, or what metadata fields is it including in its analysis, and just getting absolutely wrong answers
yeah,
consistently.
it's
Not
irritating,
necessarily with not associated with any one product at all.
right? No, no, no. Again,
Just really people trying to cash in on, needing it, right? Um,
so you teach
so
at a law school. Well, how come we're not seeing more of that at law schools? Why aren't the law schools?
I think they're trying. I think, there's a problem with it. I teach at UCLA and I teach at Santa Ana College, and I've done a lot of seminars at law schools and that kind of thing. And the issue with legal tech education, I mean, it's really hard to pull off. Trying to get all the software so that people have access to the software, and do you do it via virtual machines, or how do you do that, right? Do you have a computer lab in the law school? And so you're trying to get the sponsorship, and the software community has actually embraced this pretty well. I think Disco has a really good program, if I remember correctly. Um, whenever I've asked different software companies, will you give me 10 licenses for my class? They usually step up really well to help out. But it's still very hard to even just create the learning environment for a law school to do this. So to do it, the law school, and everyone says we need to, get this legal tech education in law school, and I absolutely agree. But it's a major, major commitment to do that. I mean, if
Hmm.
you were to think, you know, pick your software tool of choice, what does, 300 licenses of Relativity, Disco, Everlaw, et cetera, et
Yes.
cetera, et cetera,
Yeah.
reveal cost, or even if it's low cost, or, then you need the computers and the infrastructure, and then the person, right? And as a lit support person, I can probably double my salary by not working at a government institution, right?
Yeah. 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 Oh, I know. I come from a
And
family of
so,
educators.
yeah.
But do you think there's going to be a chance? I mean, the number one technology taught in law school for years,
Mhm.
sort of the, you know, just just because it was there, it was Lexis and West. And everybody, every law student got they came out of law school thinking that Lexis and Westlaw were free. They were shocked
Yeah.
when they got to a law firm. Do you think that the advent of AI incorporation into those products will help change things? Do you think those two
Yeah.
companies will?
Yes, I mean the
Not
get
that
them
they'll
hooked,
explain
the get them
anything.
hooked model, right? The get them hooked model where you give it to them for
First
free,
one's
and,
free.
and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that absolutely, we're already seeing, the law, new lawyers want to actively embrace, Gen AI and that kind of thing. But I think again, why I did such a basic paper was to really get back to the fundamentals of know what you're searching, and because I think we're kind of leaping over the fundamentals of what people need to know when they're using tools like this.
Yes. Yes. We've gone. Yeah. It's like we've skipped a couple of steps.
Right, and it's not a groundbreaking, earth-shattering, thought-provoking article. It's like know what you know what you're searching. It's going to be on the, most Gen AI tools pull from the face of the document what it sees, like OCRing paper, right? Maybe it's a couple steps above OCRing paper in terms of
Right.
getting,
Good
right.
point.
You're getting
Good
the
point.
you're
Yeah.
getting the text blob from the face of the document, and then you're hoping this tool parses it out correctly into some sort of fielded organizational structure, which that's another black box that the Gen AI companies aren't really telling us how does it parse the data,
Right.
and where's it getting it right and where is it getting it wrong. Um, so I'm still in favor of kind of that traditional processing model, where you get the error log and the data goes into a traditional database with AI features. Um, and when I say traditional, there's new tools out there that I think field data very well.
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? That
Yeah.
this the tools are going to get better. This is a
Yes.
relatively new field,
Yeah.
and things are going to. Like you mentioned, OCR. Remember the early days of
Yeah.
OCR? Well, it's like 90% accurate. Well, that's great. I mean, it's like one out of every 100 words I'm getting wrong. One out of every 10 words. What?
I mean, the tools still, like, to me, my biggest, other than the things that I brought up in my paper, my biggest criticism of a lot of the tools is that they don't report very well. So, um, in
Right.
other words, you import a document into their system and you want to see the summary. You got to click on a box, tell it to summarize it, and then it's there in that box. But many of the tools don't allow you, again, we're speaking in generalizations here. Um, Many of the tools don't allow you to say, give me the 20 transcripts from this matter and a summary of each one of them in an Excel spreadsheet or something like that. So then I can then provide that to team members or attorneys or client or whoever it is. It's still all done within the app itself, which really is, I think, slows down adoption. if
Yep.
if because the gateway is really still lit support doing a lot of the work, showing how easy it is, getting people to use it and kind of get hooked on it. And then maybe they'll take over some of those tasks themselves, and over time, more and more of those
Yeah,
tasks
maybe.
will be done, right?
Maybe. Yeah.
Um, right, what's the most efficient workflow is the question we're always asking. And
Right.
do you really want, your partner at a law firm summarize, clicking the buttons to summarize 50 transcripts and then disseminating the report? It's still, at least in big law, I don't think the most efficient process.
Well, and also you're at the front end of the data ingestion.
Right.
You're the one who's going to see the documents first. You're going to see the data first. So if, like you said, the tools can allow you to do some of those things after you talk to the attorneys, that yeah, that's a workflow issue. Yeah.
Yeah, and those things, are the things that I want to get people talking about, that I'm interested in talking about. I plan on doing more articles on other Gen AI topics, but I'd like to get people talking about what is the best way to do that, because there's somewhere between, when you hear these pitches, it's like they forget that there's let's support people in the room, and they go directly to uh, yeah. Mr. or Mrs. Attorney, you're going to do all this work yourself, and as I look at it, I don't know that it's the best process.
That's not yeah, it's not the best use of your time
It's not the best
at
use.
that part of the process. Yeah. So again, that Tara Emery article
Right.
about the way they did that and handled it, I thought was really good.
I'd
Um,
like to see
and talk about a great. It's all about the workflow. It's all about
it. Mhm.
where do you have the computers and the people at the different
Right.
stages. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And
So now, hey, just what's the name so I can shoot people to it? What was the name of the article? It's on the EDRM site.
it's on the EDRM site, EDRM blog. It's called Document Content versus Metadata in eDiscovery AI, a clarification of scope, access, and accuracy.
All right, you lost me at metadata, but I'll tell them to look on the blog with document content versus
Yeah,
metadata and your name. That'll get them to it,
it'll
right?
come up. Yeah,
Yeah.
EDRM.
Cool. And then finally, I think I asked you this, but I forget what the answer was. Will you be at Ilticon in a couple
I
weeks?
will be at Delta, and I
All right.
would
Well, there we
love
go.
to.
We should hang out in the lobby and just sit there and with the sign that says metadata.
Yeah, we'll debate metadata for beer.
That's right. Exactly.
So
Exactly. We'll have a 4:30 session all about metadata in
yes,
exchange for hops and barley.
yeah, true. I am 100% would love to discuss this with anyone, and
Uh,
meet anyone that
Yeah,
wants to talk about it.
maybe we can get a little chat going and generate some
Sure.
discussion. It would be great. That's the one thing I love about ILTA. It's my
Hmm.
favorite conference in the sense that you have really skilled technology people. We can have these discussions, and it's people who've been dealing with the data. Um, some are lawyers, some are technologists, some are
Hmm.
litigation paralegals. It's all across the board, but we can get kind of down in the weeds with this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, I would love to. And,
All right. Well,
people
then,
can reach out to me on LinkedIn if they want to connect and debate me
I'll
on the
shoot,
four
I'll
corners
shoot something
rule.
out on
And
I just got the thing yesterday for the app, the
uh
Ilticon app, and you can start groups and discussions. I'll
okay,
try to start one in there, see if we can't get a little group together.
sounds good.
All right. Well,
Okay.
thanks for people don't realize this is our second attempt at this. We get blitzed by the nasty weather in New Orleans, frying my computer
Yes,
a couple of days ago. So thanks for bearing with me and taking the time to do this again. Um, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Tom, it's a true pleasure. Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk about my article. Thank you.
All right. Well, uh, look it up again. Document content versus metadata on the EDRM blog. Shannon Bales, and we'll see you all hopefully at Ilticon in National Harbor,
Yes.
just outside of Washington D.C. in a couple of weeks. So find us there. We'll be there.
See you there.
All right.